Investment here. He's talked about the PPP, public-private partnership, foreign investment. Now, there are those who would say that even though we've had some level of PPP coming, the impact, again, I'm still stuck on that impact part. The impact is not perfect. Let's use, for instance, one of the projects in Lagos, the Orajekwe Expressway. They'll tell you that the road users, the amount of money they spend is negative. As in, it's weighing down on them compared to the amount of pleasure they're supposed to derive from the infrastructure. Now, is that the level, the kind of investment we want to build, the kind of investment environment we want to build, where the private partnerships come in, but at the end of the day, the people appear not to be benefiting as much as they should, or they need to pay to benefit from that infrastructure?
Thanks. Like you said, I mean, the truth is, let the government give the private an enabling environment to run. So when you have a public-private partnership, I mean, the government has a greater role to play to ensure, to address some of the challenges you just mentioned, to ensure that some of these projects, even when they start running, that the people who benefit from those projects, it's not like I'm benefiting from a project and it's painful to me. So government just have to provide a lot of policies to ensure that some of these projects are not really a burden to people who enjoy these facilities. So I think
the government has to regulate
proper regulation.
Be the umpire.
Exactly.
You wanted to say something about?
Yeah, I want to say that public-private partnership is not new. It's a practice that has been on for decades, and there's a proven methodology and framework in administering it. Even very well-developed countries today build roads, build schools, build hospitals on the back of PPP. What we must find out is how we onboard the mechanics of a PPP in such a way and manner that it benefits us. It's a bit subjective to say to cite the instance that you've cited just now as not benefiting the people, because I happen to live on that corridor. What we have not put in context is the massive influx of many more persons moving into that corridor,
yes,
whereby currently right now is almost right back to square one, just by the sheer influx of people overwhelming the new resource that has been put in place. But the agitation of the vast majority of people for that experience itself just says there needs to be a better dialogue in terms of being transparent about how the whole process had panned out.
So you're going to come up with the all-inclusive growth,
right,
requires dialogue between the government,
right,
the people,
right,
and the investors.
Correct.
How do we achieve that?
There are different ways we could. First is, either way we want to pursue this, there must be some level of trust that the government that we have elected is doing the right thing, and the government structure that we have today has created a platform for showing that level of transparency and accountability. So the people that live there have their representatives in the House of Assembly. They have a strong oversight over what the government does. So they have access to what government has done. I don't know what it is. I've not gone through it, but we will find a way to explore that. As critical stakeholders living in that corridor, it is not out of place to form pressure groups that meet up with government to seek some inclusive participation, some clarification to assure us that the right things are being done. But we're coming from a background where nothing was happening before to something happening. I think that's a good start. It's then to take it to the next level where it is done in a very efficient way. Do we have the best deal? Do we have the best pricing? We don't know. But the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly has the empowerment to be able to demand for that and scrutinize whether this was done correctly.
And even the National Assembly too.
Even the National Assembly. So we have the framework to be able to review and improve on what we currently have. We are a country where the level of our resources matched against the human growth that we have makes it such that government would never be able to on its own finance all these things that will improve our lives. So what we must find is a way where we are all specialists. Government specializing in putting in the enabling policy framework, and the private sector doing what they need to do, and the right government bodies being the unbiased umpire for our collective good.
Okay, in parentheses, in the course of the week, we had a figure in the media regarding the amount of money made from that particular toll station per month, and the figure was put at 15 million.
Right.
I'm wondering if when the agreements were signed between government and the private sector, whether they were working on such figures based on what you have said about the influx of people to that neighborhood.
Right.
So the money is coming in will now by far have exceeded their projections when they were signing those deals. And we would like to know if this then affects the contract in any way, the number of years to which the concessionaire has the place before it goes back to government. It's build, operate, and transfer.
Yeah.
So would it affect the number of years that they're going to be collecting these funds? We don't know. We don't have all these details.
I don't say that, but in many jurisdictions where this has taken place, there is always a capped return that the investor has to make. And there have been places where the contract had been terminated ahead of the initially estimated tenure period because that point was reached faster than it was initially conceived it would.
Okay.
We're not privy to those details. We're not privy to the financial models. We don't know what has happened. We're just trusting that the right agencies are doing it, and we should be asking them whether they are doing it and giving us an account that they are doing it to the point of satisfying our curiosity.
And we are also believing that government is looking after our interest.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, Tolu, in terms of like asking, we need to ask this question. You have been known to dress things via social media, even vocally as well. But moving it forward, how do we achieve that dialogue between government, the people, the investor, and how do we maintain the questions that we keep asking? What's happening to this contract that was signed, or this project that we're embarking on? What's happening?
I mean, I think that, where to start from is, I think, to acknowledge what, the fact that we're starting from a place of huge deficit. For years, if you hear the power sector, for example, for almost 20 years, no single investment in transmission expansion in the system. Same with, just think of it, I've heard, the Lagos State governor say that from when he was a child until he became a governor, there was almost no major investment. The Third Mainland Bridge sort of was the biggest investment in transport in Lagos in 20-30 years. We have an airport that is there is there just as it was built in 1979. When it was opened, it has not changed. In the city, Lagos at that time in 1980 was less than 4 million
It's changing
people.
now. There's some additions.
Now that's changing, but Lagos was less than 4 million people now. So there's so much hunger, that whatever comes in now is going to almost vanish.
Because there's so much and it needs to be done.
We need to acknowledge that fact that there's so much that needs to be done, but as it's being done, it's also important that the tendency is for us to then lower our standards to levels where we say, look, at least somebody is doing it. And I think that's the danger, that we cannot afford, and this is where citizens also have a part to play, where we have to ask questions, where we have to
even if we don't get answers.
And it's about compelling governments to become even more open, even more transparent, more accountable. So that, for example, we've talked about the Lekki Express. It would be nice, for conversations to happen, and not on the level of bankers and economists, but on the level of the people. Let's have these conversations, not just with that, but with what else is happening, not just at the state level, because there's also the fact that somehow we focus a lot on things mostly at national level, to some extent at state level, but then at local level, which is the most important, which is actually often the most important, there are no conversations going on. So it's easy to complain about Lagos Ibadan Express and to come out on social media about that.
If I'm coming here, that's infrastructure. Let's look at the area of job creation.
Okay.
How do we achieve job creation at the local level? Not just waiting for the government to do everything, because by 2050, Africa's population is projected to be about 2 billion by 2050. But job creation,
right? The thing with jobs actually is that you can't take government out of that equation. Right. Let's look at electricity. For example, Nigeria generates about 4,000 megawatts for 160